What's the crack, my fellow warriors of the Emperor? This is Connor, and welcome back to Warhammer 40k Dark Tide, the latest title from Shark. What I want to talk about today is what you can expect whenever you jump into threat level Damnation, the highest difficulty / threat level that is currently available in Dark Tide. This may change in future, it most likely will. There will probably be more difficulty modifiers in future, but it's very clear that at this point Dark Tide is not anywhere close to finished. Even though they're saying that it's in version 1 point whatever, it clearly is way before that point. It's in an early beta phase, so there will be a lot of things missing here, and the balancing of Damnation might need some work in future. But anyway, the first thing I want to get into is that whenever you queue for a Damnation threat level mission, you are more than likely, a lot of the times, going to be teamed up with bots. I cannot stress this enough, but as soon as you've loaded into the mission, because you'll probably end up having to go in alone, wait until the bot slots are filled with human players. The bots in this game might be helpful in some of the lower threat levels, but as you move up through the difficulties, they become more and more of a hindrance. They will not help you if you go down, and overall they just have no idea what they're doing. The coding or how the bots are programmed, I'm not a game designer clearly, but in this game I've noticed they're a lot worse than some of the other games in this type of genre, I suppose, like Back 4 Blood for example. So under no means stick with playing with bots. You will lose within the first 5 minutes of starting a mission, and it will just give you a bad taste in regards to the difficulty overall. The next thing is your arsenal, like what weapons should you be using for this difficulty, and honestly, it completely comes down to your own personal preference. I can give some recommendations and thoughts on what I'd recommend, but again, if you're comfortable using a weapon, you've spent a lot of time with it, then of course you can do just as well in Damnation as you could in Heresy. But what I would say is, from my experience, I've used a number of different weapons, I've tried them out, and to me, it seems like a weapon that has a faster reload speed is more beneficial than one with a longer reload speed. So for example, you do have the plasma gun and the bolt gun. Both are very powerful in their own right and are very effective at taking out specialists, monstrosities, you know, the big fellows. But their reload time is quite long. So I'm using the braced autogun, which you're going to see on screen right now, because the reload speed is half of that of my bolter. And although I do love my bolter, I have noticed that whenever I am playing Damnation, the braced autogun comes in pretty damn clutch in so many different scenarios. It's very good at close quarters, in mid-range fights as well. It can be quite strong, and its time to kill is quite low. So overall, I found that as a ranged weapon goes, the braced autogun is pretty damn effective. Also, the recon las gun is pretty damn effective too. But again, I wouldn't say the bolter's a bad choice, nor the plasma gun. It's really down to whatever you're comfortable using and you have experience using. In regards to melee, I am using the old reliable power sword. It was nerfed a couple of weeks ago in that it does no longer have infinite cleave, but for what it is, it's still damn strong. The thing about Damnation is that enemy spawns and horde spawns are constant for the most part, if not every couple of minutes. So you will always be under threat, and there's going to come a point where you're going to run out of ammo, grenades, and you're going to be left with just what you've got for a scrap. That will be your melee weapon. I have tried out axes or hatchets or whatever you want to call them. I've tried out chain weapons. In my personal experience, they're a little bit too, how would I say it, niche. They're very good at taking out specials as well as armoured targets. But when it comes to just holding your own against enemies en masse, the power sword is absolutely amazing, at least for veteran. That's another thing I should point out. I am a veteran main, so if I'm making these videos, just consider it that I am probably talking from the point of view of a veteran sharpshooter. So in short, I'm using the power sword because it can cleave through large numbers of enemies very quickly and very efficiently. Of the few melee weapons I have tried, this is, in my opinion, by far the best. What I want to talk about lastly is probably the most important thing you're going to have to understand about Damnation, and it's that specials, elites, and pretty much anything other than monstrosities spawn in a much higher number and at a higher rate. So you're going to be constantly having poxhounds, mutants, trappers, snipers, pretty much anything that is available in the game to fight will be attacking you in larger numbers and in a more frequent manner. Let's say that you have a very strong team, you're all using very, very good weapons that you're all very familiar with. That might not matter. In Damnation, enemies spawn constantly. Like, I mean constantly. You're always going to see a group of enemy ogre around the corner. You're going to have constant assaults from poxhounds, trappers, mutants, snipers. Everything is going to be attacking you all at once. So whereas you might not be used to dealing with all of these threats at the same time, Damnation is going to make you very, very familiar with dealing with all threats all at once. So if I could give you one tip and one thing to always focus on, it's taking care of enemies that are there to immobilize you and your teammates. Poxhounds, trappers, mutants, they are your main target and should be the highest priority in taking them out. Let's say, for instance, a poxhound downs and pins one of your allies. It might be faster for you to go over with your melee and push them off rather than trying to take the extra few hits or the extra few shots to kill them outright. Because you never know, there might be another poxhound on its way to you or an enemy trapper on their way to you to pin another member of your team or even just you yourself. You may also want to consider using a build that is more beneficial to your team overall. So for example, from a veteran's point of view, I could focus more on generating grenades for my teammates because you're going to be in more fights more frequently, which means you're going to burn through your munitions at a faster rate. So any help you can give to your teammates, the better, which is why I highly recommend you be level 30 for this threat level. I mean, it's going to help you, it's going to help your teammates out. It's a no-brainer really, isn't it? Like I was saying earlier about prioritizing targets, this is something you and your team must be able to do quite efficiently. You can still make your way through Damnation and get lucky, but if you want to be efficient, get them done quickly and get more done after that, then again, you need to prioritize certain targets. Me, for example, if there are no enemies currently in play that immobilize, I will focus on larger enemies like the unyielding Ogren. If they're able to close to melee, then they really can bog the battle down and slow you to a standstill. Me, for example, my weapons are kind of built around those guys so we can get them out of the fight as quickly as possible, meaning that we can focus on the smaller enemies, the smaller specialists, and the elites. While on the subject of elites, the quantity in which they spawn and the frequency for which they spawn is quite high. You're more likely to run into a large group of elites, and those guys are basically just the traitorous guardsmen, the scab shotgunners, you know, the machine gunners, whatever you want to call them. They can honestly be at times more of a problem than even the specialists. They prefer to fight at range, they suppress, and they're just a massive pain in the ass. So even though you do want to prioritize targets, you might want to have someone that's just there to take out some of the elites and lower their numbers overall, lest you get overwhelmed by them. The last thing I will point out is that monstrosities are still quite easy to handle even on Damnation. If you take out any support around them, and then slowly whittle them down at range, or even in melee if you're able to block and dodge in time, they're just really not a threat. And that's it. That's just my thoughts and maybe some recommendations or tips on how to deal with Damnation. It isn't honestly all that difficult. I did find the higher difficulties in Vermintide 2 more challenging, but yeah, that's Damnation. In regards to rewards you get from completing a Damnation mission, it's quite underwhelming. You do have a chance at getting a weapon or a curio of a higher rating, but the drop chance or the reward chance I've discovered is not all that high. And honestly, just overall, the reward system in Darktide doesn't feel all that rewarding. It was much better in Vermintide 2, and I could say that in regards to a lot of things relating to Darktide and Vermintide 2. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, great. And I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're playing. If you're playing Darktide, then continue to purge the enemies of mankind. And I, of course, like always, will see you next time. Bye bye.